All right, and here we are in the final part of the part three success formula of e commerce arbitrage, vendor relationships, and finance. And this part is just as important to know and understand as essentially any other, if not more. This is a part where once you have, or at least building a established business where the revenue is pretty high, the numbers are pretty high, the inventory overturn is quite high as well, meaning a lot of products are coming in and out. These all these things are becoming vital to your business. However, it's best to start putting the fundamentals or the foundation with your vendors and your finances pretty early in the game. Now, remember, this is all after you're kind of getting out of the single web pages and getting into the store, the brand, and your company. So this is a little bit down the road, but again, the purposes of this overview is to give you direction and a path to see where this can lead to, and to see the potential and to see the exact paths that we've taken so that you can either take a similar path, or if you'd like, you can obviously veer off in your own direction, but at least you have a good understanding as to where this business can take you. When we started this business, we went in blind. We knew nothing about it. We knew nothing about the structure of how e-commerce works, retail, the vendor relationships, the financial aspects, none of the things that we're going over, including the product that we're selling in and niche that we're selling in, we had any understanding of, at least on the level that we do now. So that's why knowing this information now would help us a ton. And I'm assuming it would help you a ton as well if you have this information kind of in mind, or at least have an overview before you get to this point. So vendor relationship and finance starts with opening a Net30 account with vendors. Now, this is not something that vendors typically open right off the bat. What is a Net30 account to begin with? Well, Net30 account is really an account, a credit account with the vendors that you're purchasing your products with. What that means is they send you the product first, the physical product, and then give you 30 days to pay for it after the product reaches you. So that gives you a humongous advantage because you don't have to take out the cash out of your pocket and buy the product and then sell it and kind of obviously carry that balance while you're selling it. The Net30 essentially gives you an ability to get the product, sell it, and then use those funds to pay your vendor, which gives you a humongous advantage, especially in the beginning when you may not have access to an enormous amount of funds. Now, how do you even get the Net30 account? Well, initially, vendors typically work on a credit basis, meaning you buy and then you receive. And as you grow, you may ask them for a Net30 account, and they may start you low or they may start you high. For example, they may start you only at $10, $20, $30,000 worth of merchandise that you're able to buy. Once you pay it off in 30 days, you're able to buy more. You get to a point where your Net30 account can be multiple hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars. And of course, that takes trust, that takes relationships, and all kinds of stuff. And of course, proof the fact that you can pay them on time. So let's actually take a look at what a Net30 application even looks like. So I'm going to hop over to the internet here, and this is just a random Net30 application that I pulled up by some company called 5S Supplies. So as you can see, it says Net30 terms is payment is due 30 days from the invoice date. What that really means is you order a product, if they invoice you, meaning they're shipping this item out to you and putting the amount on the invoice, from that point on, you have 30 days to pay for that product. So it's pretty straightforward. As you can see, they're offering a $1,000 credit limit, and every company is different in terms of how low or high they have the Net30 account when you start a relationship with them. And again, this is not necessarily something that you may get right off the bat, but if you get to a point where you're able to set up the Net30 account with your supplier, essentially almost all the applications look the same. They're about 1 or 2 pages. They want your company information, some a little more, some a little less, and then they want references, credit references, essentially businesses vendors or banks that you deal with that can basically reference and give you a good reference and say, yes, go ahead and give this guy or this company a net 30 account because they have a great relationship with us. They've always paid on time and so on and so forth. So this is another reason why in the beginning it's very difficult to get a net 30 account. You need some kind of relationship with companies. Now, I'll, of course, dive into this subject more as we go on in our course in the future modules, but I just wanted to give you an idea as to what you can expect and what you can prepare for as you grow your company. So once you fill this out, they go through their process, and usually the companies do some calculations and maybe even get an insurance policy out on your company, meaning to protect themselves in case you actually default and not pay, so that they don't necessarily lose all their money, but at least get some kind of payment from the insurance. So this is a pretty serious application and a pretty serious step in your business when other vendors can trust you and give you credit for 30 days, especially when those numbers run high. You can get in the 30 accounts, as I mentioned already, in hundreds of thousands of dollars and even millions of dollars, as long as you build that relationship with your vendor. Now, I'll talk about later in the modules how to start, because it's probably the most difficult part, which is, to get started. How do you get the first one, the second one, and how do you build it up? But I just wanted to kind of give you an overview what you can deal with as you grow your business, because a net 30 gives you certainly an advantage in your business, allowing that cash flow to get kind of behind you in a way where you are paying the vendors only after you're selling the products, essentially slightly repeating the original structure of the business where when we started, as you remember, we sold first and then went to eBay sellers to buy it. Same thing occurs here, where you're selling the items first and then using the generated revenues to pay the vendors, which is a whole different structure than taking the money out of your pocket, right? So this is a pretty powerful way of growing your business as well, and can only be available to you if the relationships with your vendors are, of course, positive, and you're allowing to grow your business and their business at the same time. So the next part is strategically grow your credit card limits. So what does that really mean? Well, I'll give you our story. When we first started our business, the only funds that we had, remember, we really started selling first and buying later. And then as we grew and grew and grew, we needed to buy more and more and more. Because once you go into a different structure of your business that we're discussing in part 3, which is pattern of creation, you need a heck of a lot more control of your business, which means you need to start carrying inventory of your own. You can't depend on eBay sellers for several reasons. A, they probably don't have as much inventory as you need to do the numbers that you do at this point. B, many people buy on those from those eBay sellers, and you're just going to be competing with everybody else. And at the end of the day, if you're buying on eBay, you're really buying at a retail price, and you want to be buying at a wholesale price. So in order to buy at a wholesale price, you need to go to the manufacturers or the wholesalers. So basically, now you're dealing with other companies that don't sell on eBay. They take credit cards, for example. So you really need your own funds. And as I mentioned before, it's very difficult to go to a bank and say, hey, give me a loan. So the best thing to do, and this is a little bit going towards the long-term strategies versus the short-term strategies and the gains that you get from both of them, you should be, in my opinion, thinking about this very early on in the game when you're starting to carry inventory of your product. Because what ends up happening is, let's say you have a $5,000 credit card limit or $2,000 or any limit. It doesn't matter what it is that you're starting with, 5, 10, 20, whatever it is. What you want to do is, as much as you can, to the best of your ability, pay off that credit card in full several times a month. So what does that mean? So let's say you have a credit card for $10,000 as an example, and you buy inventory worth of $10,000 with from your vendor, from your wholesaler, from the manufacturer, and now you have a $10,000 limit with them. So assuming that you can sell this $10,000 worth at least in a short period of time before the month is over, before the credit card total is due, you pay that $10,000 back to your credit card, and you run that purchase again. If you can, run the purchase again, purchase $10,000 worth again before the end of the month. And if you can, pay that $10,000 off as soon as you can, again, before the end of the month. So now you have a $10,000 limit, but you've used it twice, essentially for $20,000 in 1 month. And if you can keep that up for at least 3 months, you can pick up the phone and you can call your bank and you can say, hey, look, obviously you could see my track record here. You could see my history here. I've been doing very well, and 10,000 is simply not enough for me. Why don't we have a conversation so you can raise my credit limit to at least double that, if not more? And they look at your history and they either approve you or deny you. If you keep doing what I just suggested you do, then you will definitely be able to raise your limit. And then that way, throughout the year, for example, you're able to do it 4 times. Essentially, each credit card or each bank usually does it at once every 3 months. And then imagine, you started with $10,000, and let's say you simply doubled it. You didn't even triple it, but you just doubled it. So the next time you double it, you're now at $40,000, right? So you doubled it once from 10 to 20. You doubled it another time from 20 to 40. You doubled it another time, the third time, from 40 to 80. And you've doubled it one more time at the end of the year from $80,000 to $160,000. Now, assuming everything is going well in your business and everything is essentially being paid off on time and maybe even multiple times, and you're growing very quickly, you just went from $10,000 limit to $160,000 limit on your credit card, which allows you to, of course, buy a ton more inventory and grow at the speed of light. It also allows you to, if you do have a net 30 relationship with your vendor by this time, use the credit card to pay off the net 30 account and then pay the credit card based on the proceeds that you generated by selling the merchandise. Now you're growing 2 accounts at the same time. The net 30 account grows from the basically you paying it off on time, and the vendors essentially say, well, yeah, we'll raise your limit because you're doing so well. And then the credit card grows because you keep paying that on time, and they keep raising your account. So at the same time, you now have essentially almost 8 time, if the net 30 account is growing at the same speed as the credit card limit, for example, in the example that I've just used, you've just went from $10,000 to a point of somewhere in a ballpark of $320,000 or somewhere in that ballpark in a span of the year. Now imagine doing that with multiple cards, and now you have access to almost, or maybe even over $1 million without going to a bank, without asking your friends, without asking your family, by simply using your funds smart and by allowing the product to basically pay for your growth. Now, I said there's a strategy here, and I said there's a sort of a little bit of a hindrance to the short-term gains. What does that mean? Well, in the short term, because you're using all your funds to pay the credit card and grow your business and grow your limits, you're not taking these funds and putting them in your pocket. You're not taking these funds and, buying a car for yourself. So for the short-term gains, you're not seeing much, but you're building your business for the long term. And by the end of the cycle, so to speak, at some point, you've grown so fast and so much that the bonuses, so to speak, that you've collected for yourself at the end of the year, or in 2 years, or in 3 years, maybe even in a half a year, whatever you decide, is so much more now because you're playing a big numbers game. So this is where the short-term gains may not be there at all, but the long-term gains will be massive. So this is where these strategies of short and long work against each other or versus each other, but at the same time, you're doing it with a certain strategy in mind and a certain map to get you to a certain place. So this is an example of how you can use the finances and the vendor relationships to grow your business and allow yourself to explode your business and grow it to a massive proportion in a very short period of time. Now, the third is the liquidation of overstocked products. What does that really mean? Well, every business, and if you actually jump with me to the internet, I'll even show you a website which you may be very familiar with called Overstock.com. Now, basically, there are many different websites like these, and some are bigger, some are smaller. But essentially, what these websites do is have access to an enormous amount of products that are being liquidated by other companies, and they purchase them at a very low price and then they resell it to consumers. These don't have to be used products. A lot of times these are brand new sealed products that a lot of stores kind of dump off their shelves to free up the cash. So having a strategy, and this is just one simple direct strategy out of so many, and again, we'll share a lot more down the road in this course, but as an overview, this is very important to understand, because at the end of the day, think about it like this. So let's say you purchased 100 units of whatever product, and let's say you sold 70% of that product at 30% net profit, but you also have 30% of the product laying on a shelf, right? So that essentially means, if you do the math, and I know I'm going into the too much numbers in math, which I personally don't like, but I just wanted to give you an example. If you sell 70% of your merchandise and 30% of your merchandise is remaining on the shelves, and you made 30% margin on the 30% profit on the 70% merchandise that you've sold, you really didn't make 30% profit. You really made about 20% profit, because the remaining merchandise is sitting there on the shelves. So if you grow and your business essentially buys more inventory and more of it is sitting on the shelves, for example, you can find yourself and your business with hundreds of thousands of dollars sitting on your shelves and affecting your business, your profit, your margins, everything, your cash flow, everything. And very quickly, this can really become a big problem for your business. So having a strategy for an overstock or liquidating that overstock product is highly important, and you want to develop it as early as you can. Now, again, there's many different strategies. One of them is liquidating to companies that will pay you pennies on the dollar. Other ways, there are many other ways, like giving away your merchandise in order to gain new customers and prospects, or having flash sales at reduced prices. Many different creative and straightforward strategies. But it is important, because at the end of the day, your business can take a big hit and even become a non-profitable business if those numbers get too big. And at the end of the day, you won't be able to pay those credit cards or those vendors because the product isn't selling. It's sitting on your shelves, right? So it is important to keep these things in mind. So that's essentially it for vendor relationships and finance. And the last part, or the formula of the e-commerce arbitrage, this was all about product creation and a little bit of a overview and a 30,000-foot view of what a successful business can become and what it takes to run it. And in the following modules, we'll dive into many of these aspects, really take a closer look, dissect them in many different ways, from advertising to many of the points that we covered in this overview video, in these 3 parts of this overview video, and essentially take you step by step from going from zero and having no product to going to about becoming a drop shipper and an e-commerce arbitrage entrepreneur, to running your own business and essentially generating millions of dollars in revenue. So I hope this was interesting for you, and I hope I was able to, at least in an overview fashion, share a lot of information about where we're going, how to get there, and of course we'll dive into all of this in these modules to come. But before that, I just wanted to share the action steps for this part with you, so you can again solidify everything that we've learned and start the process that we're going to jump into in the next module. So the first action step is pretty simple. Create a Facebook page for your future brand. So let me really give you an idea of what that means. If you're thinking of creating or selling a product for dogs, then your Facebook page should reflect the name that has something to do with dogs. But don't go too specific, because dog products are pretty broad and you can choose many different products. So don't necessarily start your Facebook page, food for dogs or something like that, because you may want to start selling not only food, but all kinds of merchandise. Be specific in terms of the niche, but don't be too specific to give you room to sell other merchandise that's not necessarily related to one specific category of those items. I hope that was clear. Again, if you're selling, for example, makeup, don't necessarily name your Facebook page, eyeliners or us, right? Be a little bit more broad so you can sell all kinds of items that's related to makeup. The second item on the action step is write out your plan of action that will allow you to hit your financial goal in the first 30 days. Now, as you can see, I've kind of made sure that the word your is bold and itemized. The reason is because everybody has different financial goals. You may want to hit only $1,000 in the first 30 days. Somebody may want to hit $100,000. It's okay in either case. The secret is to pick a number that's just out of reach, not too insane or outrageous, because that's not going to be believable even for you, and you're just going to not bother because, hey, that's too outrageous anyway. But to pick a number that's just out of reach so you can stretch out and push yourself to get there. And the way that you start the planning is figure out which products, and we've done that in the last set of action steps, you're going to be selling. And then from there, see what is the product price that you're going to be selling at, what your profit will be, and how many of those items you're going to need to sell in the period of 30 days. And then you'll get a closer or better idea as to how many of these items you'll need to buy, and just give yourself a little bit more realistic picture rather than just pick a number. So if you're looking for $10,000, how many items do you need to sell to get to $10,000? So envision it, put it in writing, put your plan in your head on paper, so that way it's going to become more real for you. And the last action step is to open a free account on itdoesit.com. Now, I am not going to go in explaining as to why, but let me just say that it will semi-automate the process when you start buying and selling items in the initial process of e-commerce arbitrage, where you're going to have to look for the product, make sure that they're sold, follow up with the eBay seller, for example, to purchase them, keep notes about it, and then obviously keep track of profit and losses and all that stuff. So in order for you to save a lot of hours of data entry, and trust me, I've gone through that, eventually weeks later I found itdoesit.com, which automated the process, and it saved me a lot of hours a day, putting in the numbers and making sure that we're in profit versus loss, and just keeping track of everything, because it can get real hectic real quick. So that's it. Those are the action steps. That's the last part of step 3 of the formula, of the success formula. I hope this was interesting and informative for you, enough to give you excited about what we're about to do and the journey we're about to take, and what you are able to do in today's world of e-commerce. So with that, let's end this video and jump into the next module. We're going to be breaking down everything and diving in into how to structure everything step by step and building your business together step by step, block by block. All right, so I'll see you in the next module.